Okay, you're from the Lobbyist firm, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And good afternoon. I see we've been joined by Ms. Lewis from Legal Services. How are you? This is Ms. Lewis.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Thank you. So just so you know, we are on Facebook Live now. We'll be getting started very shortly, but Ashanti C. Brown, who is an intern in our office, he does some little pre-meeting interviews, nothing heavy, just some little light banter, just so we won't have silence while we're on Facebook. So Ashanti, ask anyone any questions. It's okay.
Well, yeah, I was just asking Mr. Etheridge about his African art. You know, he's kind of like my parents in that respect. They have a lot of stuff like that. So, you know, is your interest in that, has that been long-term, or is that developed as they were given to you as gifts, or how did you really get into art like that?
My personal collection kind of developed as they were given as gifts. Again, the first pieces that I personally owned were wedding gifts. I've got two tapestries from Ghana, which were hand woven, that I gave my parents as birthday gifts when I was an intern in Senator Carl Levin's office, you know, over 20 years ago. His office manager at the time, Cassandra Woods, she did a lot of work in Ghana, and she had brought them back and just like literally given them to me, and I gifted them to my parents. I had them framed and matted, but you know, they kind of started it.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, I can appreciate stuff like that. Moving on to Miss Cram. I'm not sure if she could hear me or not.
I can.
Miss Cram, I asked Mr. Etheridge this as well. I'm looking to ask this question to all the panelists. What's the hardest part about working from home for you personally?
Actually, I kind of love working from home. I don't have my hour-long commute in the morning and another hour getting home. I'm with my dog, who I've shut out of the room right now, but I've actually quite enjoyed this. I think the hardest part is not seeing your colleagues on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Well, you mentioned your dog, though. Is that, I mean, I know, you know, for me personally, staying in shape is kind of hard due to, you know, the gym being closed and all that. Does your dog, I guess, assist with you losing weight, you know, walking the dog in the morning, anything of that nature?
Well, I don't lose weight, but I do walk the dog.
Right, no, exactly, right, exactly.
No, I do. I do Zoom Pilates, and then I walk the dog. So that's the best I can do.
Okay. Cool. I'm not sure if Stephanie can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, Miss Washinton, I'll ask you, what's the hardest part for you working from home, and also I guess staying active. I'll put it like that, not to offend anybody, not my intention whatsoever, but staying active from staying from home. What's the hardest part about that? What are some challenges that you experience personally?
So I would agree, it's not terrible working from home, but I do miss I'm a big socialite, so I miss the human interaction, you know, just running to somebody's office and asking a question, or, you know, just engaging them on business issues or just personal issues. I miss that personal human connection. Now, as far as exercise, I have been fortunate because I have a treadmill here. And, you know, when the weather's and a Peloton, I invested in a Peloton like as a Christmas present to myself last year. So that's been very helpful. And I also have a little dog. So, you know, the days where we can go out, like it looks like the rest of this week, the weather will be beautiful. It's actually pretty today. And, you know, I like to go out for a walk. That's very helpful. So I think the hardest part of this is just not being able to interact with your colleagues face to face in person.
Well, you mentioned the weather, and I may be the only one, but this is for anybody on the panel, is it concerning for anybody that it's 50 degrees in May? What would normally be like a 60 to 70, like, because honestly, I'll go outside in the morning, even to get, you know, the mail from the mailbox, you know, I'll be freezing in my t-shirt. So does anyone else have an issue with that? Am I the only one? Am I just a crazy young man?
Well, you haven't lived, I don't think you've lived in Michigan long enough then, because the reality is, as we all know, is there's cold Mays, and then there's some warm November. So it's I think that's what's great about the Michigan weather. It's an unpredictability at times, but
I don't know.
Yeah, but we've had record-breaking lows this month. I mean, we break shattered records from like the 1930s, so that is a little concerning. It's been a little extra cold for May for this year to me.
I think the thing that alarmed me a little bit was when I saw the snow. I mean, it didn't
Right,
stink,
that
but it was
that's what I'm
just like,
saying.
why
Right,
is there snow in May? So that was
right,
like, yeah.
right.
That is alarming. That's true. Yeah.
I don't know.
But,
I see that, and you know, I get worried. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it's gonna be.
Ashanti, I'm sorry about that. I don't mean to cut you off. Hi,
No, no problem.
everybody. Council President, if you're listening in, we're 2 minutes from start time and all of your panelists are present.
Well, Mr. Gonzalez, I'll ask you, I guess, really quickly, what's the hardest part for you from working from home during this pandemic, this crisis?
So I'm in commercial real estate for over 35 years, and I took a position. I reduced one of my divisions about a decade ago, and I moved to my home office.
Oh.
So I have been accustomed to working from a home office. At that time, I had a young family. No longer my family now are up in their two up in college at MSU. So it's been a great experience. So I could have one-on-one with my children to watch them grow. I do miss the one-on-one with their colleagues in the market, but you know, I set appointments like most people in my business, and then I have that interaction. You know, so and I'm very active in other sports and that keeps me involved in that. So it hasn't not been as much of an adjustment for me. But having said that, it's a good positive experience, and you know, I think with some of my other clients that are used to having that I represent, that are used to being around a number of people because they're in a more collaborative type of work environment.
Okay.
You know, I've you know, heard that you know, it's been adjustment for them. So, but I think we're a resilient marketplace, and we've all kind of figured out how to adjust, and it'll be an adjustment as we go forward, at least for the time being, until we get a handle on how the new normal is going to be, as I see it.
That new normal is always scary to me. I don't want to envision that or see that. Hopefully it's not too different from the old normal, but it's 2:00. I'm not sure if the council president is available.
I am here.
Oh,
I
she's
am
here.
live.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon to this awesome panel that we have here with us today. Thank you for joining us this day. And to anyone that did not know, I am your Detroit City Council President, Brenda Jones, and I'm here to give you, first of all, an update on several items of interest voted on by the Detroit City Council at yesterday's formal session. Let me first begin with the approval of two crucial resolutions. One was a resolution I sponsored urging relief for renters and landlords as a result of the COVID-19 income loss. The resolution urges Governor Whitmer and the Michigan State Legislature to enact emergency legislation to authorize the courts to use payment plans in lieu of eviction by implementing tiered payment plans based on the amount of rent and the income of the renter, and also to enact a rental moratorium for households that are unable to pay rent due to the pandemic. The resolution also urges Mayor Duggan to allocate any additional funding towards financial assistance for landlords to offset the cost of mortgage payments. Also to offset the price of the rental property maintenance costs, and to review the enforcement of the current property maintenance ordinance in order to provide relief to landlords. I also joined an awesome resolution sponsored by Council Member Janae Ayers in support of the United States Senator Gary Peters COVID-19 Heroes Fund. This purpose is for a pandemic premium pay increase for essential frontline workers, equivalent to a raise of an additional $13 per hour from the start of the public health emergency until 60 days after its termination. In addition to resolutions, there also were several crucial contracts approved by the Detroit City Council. One of the contracts was contract number 3043410, and that was approved to provide emergency breakfast and lunch meals served to youth in response to COVID-19 at various sites throughout the city of Detroit, and to include parks and recreation department locations. The meals that the city have provided have gone from 40,000 to 54,000 meals provided weekly. A small pilot program of a home delivery service also has started. Contract number 6002761 was approved to provide pre-development soft costs and hard costs to support new construction of a 160 space public parking garage that benefits all residents of the surrounding service area. This area is comprised of over 51% low and moderate income residents for the Sugar Hill project. There will be 14 affordable housing units specifically for our veterans in the Sugar Hill development. I was able to work with Sonya, the president and the CEO of Develop Detroit, to successfully advocate for $60 per month parking for the veteran housing units. And you know, $60 per month these days in the city of Detroit is truly a good price for parking. I said in a minute, we're gonna be with New York when it comes to parking, and we won't talk about what the New York cost is for parking. Ms. Mays also will partner with the Veterans Task Force to place veterans in the affordable units. It's good to see you, Ms. Sonya Mays, today. Can you just give us a brief overview of your project?
Yep. Thanks for having me today, Madam President. I'm always really excited to talk about developing housing in Detroit. So the Sugar Hill Project is a mixed-use development that my nonprofit has been working on for the last couple of years. It has a housing component that is partially what we call market rate housing and partially housing for veterans, specifically veterans who are experiencing homelessness. And I'll talk a little bit more about that component in the project in a second. The Sugar Hill development also has a set of ground floor retail in it. And then, as you mentioned, a large parking garage that is going to service both the people that live in the apartment units, but also surrounding businesses, and to try to meet the needs of the people who have been running businesses in that area and have struggled with getting accessible parking in the area. So that's the development. We're super excited. It's two nonprofits that are bringing this. It's actually designed by a Black architect who's been working on the new Motown Museum expansion. So just really excited to be able to deliver this kind of development in Detroit.
Let me ask you just a quick question. How important do you think it is to have equitable and community-based development?
Yeah, and that's the entire purpose of my nonprofit, is to really marry those two things. So, you know, I run an organization that believes that as Detroit grows, we can develop in a way that's inclusive and equitable for everybody who lives here, especially legacy residents. And so what I've tried to do is I've tried to bring this city leadership, the city council projects that really reflect that. And so what could have happened on this site, so just for everybody's reference, this is located on Garfield and John R. So it is tucked right behind the Nnamdi Center, right adjacent to MOCAD and across from the VA Center. And so what could have happened at this is smack dab in Midtown. Right now it's an empty lot. And what could have happened is a developer could have bought this site from the city and built as many high-end units on it as possible. We thought there was a better way. And so we worked with the city to do more of a hybrid approach. So to bring some of those, market-based rents into the building, but also to bring a bunch of stuff that probably wouldn't get built if you didn't have an eye toward community and an eye toward mission. So we're trying to put a very community-focused set of retailers in it. And then of course, it is very, very difficult to do homeless housing. And this is very much a test case of how do you do homeless housing specifically for veterans in a building that is otherwise more traditional. So I think everybody should be watching this project as a real test of inclusive development and how we can reimagine and rethink our cities to make sure that everybody has a shot at the rising tide.
Okay, thank you. Let me just ask you one more quick question. What are some of the things that you would like the community to know about development in Detroit that may not be widespread knowledge?
Yeah, I think that there's a perception that most folks who are operating in development in Detroit are trying to maximize their profit at all costs. There's definitely that, but there is a subset of folks who are out here who are really trying to do the right thing. I consider myself among them, who are trying to do housing for everybody, to do housing for people who are very low income, for seniors, for homeless people. And so I'd like to just remind people that there's a diversity of folks working in this space, and the more we can uplift the people who are doing the right thing, the better off I think we all will be, because we get to set the right models. And I think the other thing that I just highlight is we're getting ready to go into a really tough time. By most accounts, we're already there, but we're really going to have to pull ourselves together as a community to support the most vulnerable of us, those who may struggle to pay rent, those who may struggle to stay in their homes, in their rental homes once the eviction ban is lifted. So I want to applaud you, Madam President, for all the work that you're doing and foresight and leadership you're having, you're exhibiting on that. On that front, because I think it's going to be a pretty big challenge for this community in the next couple of years.
And I also want to thank you, Ms. Mays, for what you are doing in the community. I just want to say to you, you have set a standard. So moving forward, I've requested that all affordable housing developments include affordable parking. And I will be working to address this issue legislatively. So you have definitely set the standard, and I want to say thank you to you for the things that you are doing in our community. Thank you, and much success with all that you are doing.
Appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thank you. So next, contract number 6001913 was approved, providing an increase of funds to the Wayne County Neighborhood Legal Services for case management, legal services, and resources for victims of human trafficking. Today, Attorney Lindsay and Ms. Lewis are joining us to discuss these services. If you can just give us a brief overview of the work that you are doing to support human trafficking victims.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Madam President. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about our program. Again, I'm from Neighborhood Legal Services, and we've been around since 1966, and we provide legal services, housing placement services, and most recently, we've just opened a transitional house. With respect to our human trafficking program, we provide legal services in the area of custody, personal protection orders, divorce, guardianship proceedings to help moms reunite with their children. We also provide supportive services with respect to peer counseling. We have a human trafficking survivor as an advocate in our program, and she provides peer counseling to the victims of human trafficking that we encounter. It's a 12-week program. There's a class that they complete, and at the end of the class, there's a graduation. After that 12 weeks is up, if the participants still want to participate in the program, we do offer aftercare workshops where we continue to provide one-on-one counseling services and continue to provide legal services as needed for the victims of human trafficking.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So in human trafficking, we know we didn't see the auto show. We won't see the auto show probably, but we know in the city of Detroit, human trafficking really goes up around the auto show period time. And so human trafficking was something that I really have been working on. So many people just don't realize how some of our girls and males are involved in human trafficking. Often they just look at them as they're just a prostitute out there, and they don't realize that it's human trafficking, and they, view it the wrong way. And so can you just talk about how those that are in need get in contact with you all?
Certainly. We provide services in lots of substance abuse centers and certain domestic violence and human trafficking shelters. Most recently, we began partnering with 36 district courts, so they are now referring clients that the court comes in contact with. They are now referring those clients to us for services, for support services and legal services. So we get clients on a wide range of locations. But one of the big things is that we find is that so many of the clients that we encounter, many times they don't even recognize that they've been sexually exploited or victims of human trafficking. So there's also an educational component to let individuals know if these certain things have happened to you, that's a form of sexual exploitation and human trafficking. So part of our job is also to educate as well.
Okay, and so what are some of the tips that you have for those that are at risk for human trafficking?
Well, one of the things that we're trying to do now is to become more involved with the public schools, because we're finding that some of the young ladies and our young men as well who come from certain environments are more at risk for human trafficking, even in the school setting. You see it with respect to some of the forced kind of gang behavior, and certain things like that are ways that lead to human trafficking. So we're trying to work with the Detroit Public Schools to get our message out there, because education and prevention is key to helping this population.
Okay, and so what are some of the words that you would like to give to those that are looking to escape from human trafficking? What are some of the words that if we encounter someone that might be involved in human trafficking, what are some of the words that you can even give to us to give to those that are looking to escape human trafficking?
Well, one of the first things we would recommend, if you see someone and you think they are being victimized, it's always appropriate to call the police. If you can safely, perhaps take a picture of the individual or take a picture of the license plate so that you can have something to provide to the police, that's always very helpful. But the first thing we want to encourage individuals is to contact the police. In terms of encouragement, we always like to let our clients know that there's always an opportunity for a fresh start. We've had some clients who have been as young as 16 and 17, and some clients who have been in their 50s. So it's never too late to get a fresh start. And whenever you're ready for a fresh start, we are here to help you. Again, we provide legal services. Sometimes if individuals are fleeing, we're able to provide hotel accommodations. And as my colleague is going to talk about, we've most recently just opened a transitional house. So help is available if you need help.
Okay, Ms. Lewis, let's hear from you. You've been so quiet and patient sitting there with that pretty smile.
Hi, how are you, Madam President?
I am blessed by the best. Thank you for asking. And how are you?
I am wonderful, and I am so excited to be with Neighborhood Legal Services as we have embarked on this new territory for housing for survivors of human trafficking and domestic violence here in the city of Detroit. So because of the COVID-19, we were a little delayed in starting the program, but we are up and running, and we are very excited for the house that we have. In order for anyone who would be interested in the house, what happens is it goes through CAM, and that's the coordinated assessment model. And we have rooms for 8 individuals, or even someone with a family, a small family. And we're here, we are connecting with the community, with the police department, and we are so fortunate is to have the legal services along with Miss Lindsay and her team, that really we work together. And so our house is open now, and we have room for 8. We have 3 individuals in our house. And not only are we just concentrating on people surviving, we want people to start thriving again. And when you thrive, that means you're changing and you're growing and you're doing things differently. And so we're working with GED, job placement, stability, financial empowerment, and just all of those things, so individuals won't be entrapped or snared into things that will be harmful for themselves and their family. So it's an exciting time in the midst of all that's going on. We're very excited about what's to come. And we're here in the community, individuals or anyone that's interested in what we are doing. I do have a phone number that I could be reached at. If I can get that, that's 313-914-3760. Our place is undisclosed because we want to protect the individuals that are here at our house, whether it's for the human trafficking or domestic violence. And we see that they do run very closely together. And so it's just an exciting time. Our house is up and running, and we're just looking forward to servicing the community.
And thank you so much for that awesome information. During this time of the pandemic, that's all we think about is how bad things are going. And that's so good that you have that good information, because also often, the girls or, whomever is being the human trafficking person, they're saying that they feel as if they are the victim. And if they try to turn away from that life, what do? Who's there to help them? Where do they go? No one understands. Now their family have turned their backs on them. They can't go back home. Even those that are involved in domestic violence relationships, they feel like, where am I gonna go? I have no place to go, so I have to stay here and continue to be abused. And so it's good to hear good news in the midst of all that is going on during this pandemic. And so I want to just say thank you to both of you for all that you do. Again, I am truly one that support anyone that's there to help assist our people who are coerced, because I say they are coerced into being involved in human trafficking. A lot of times they don't even know what they're getting involved into. And once they get involved, they don't know how to turn away from it. So thank you all so much for what you are doing and what you are giving back to help individuals that need help during this time of the COVID-19. I truly appreciate you all, and I am a big advocate of what you all are doing. So thank you again so very much for what you are doing.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Next, the Detroit City Council approves contract number 6002846, allowing Squire Patton Boggs to provide governmental assistance in the facilitation for the City of Detroit lobbying efforts. We have Stephanie Washinton from the Mayor's Office, Director of Government Affairs, and Victoria Cram of Squire Patton Boggs here to speak on the federal lobbying efforts. And let me just say, before they begin, no one should take for granted Squire Patton Boggs because they've been around for a while. They are the heavyweights and they do good work in Washington, D.C. So ladies, take the floor and run with it.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to start with thank you for your support and supporting this effort and giving us this resource because we want to maximize those COVID-19 dollars from the federal level with all this legislation that's going on. I also want to give you a shout out, Council President, because prior to this pandemic, you have been advocating and pushing the administration to bring forth a federal lobbyist. And I want to say we got there, but unfortunately it was through COVID, but we did get there, and I want to thank you for that. But I just want to tell you the reason why, just real quick, we chose Squire Patton Boggs is number one, their leadership. Former Secretary of Transportation Rodney Slater is leading the Detroit team for this effort. He was the Secretary of Transportation under the Clinton administration and just very well connected, and just, very established in that federal space. Additionally, we chose this firm because they have success with other local jurisdictions, which really appealed to us because they understand homelessness, CDBG, transportation, obviously, infrastructure, which is very important to us. So that was a large reason. We also enjoyed their coalition and their network that they have. Specifically, they have a strong relationship with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and we thought that'd be advantageous to take advantage of that network. Additionally, they, just in general have been around. They're really perceived with a strong reputation in the federal space. They are bipartisan, and we just thought, together they could represent the city of Detroit, and we just really wanted a firm that was a powerhouse and that could hit the ground running and really bring home those resources for our Detroit residents. So Vicki, if you'd like to say anything. Vicki is my new colleague at Squire Patton Boggs, and she's been a pleasure to work with, extremely responsive, and knows her stuff, because Vicki, you've been around in this space for like 30 years, correct? So I'll give you the mic.
I'm embarrassed to admit I've been around that long, but I have.
I thought you was a little younger than 30 years, Vicki. So that's all right, you look good.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here with you, Madam President, and it's fascinating and wonderful to hear all the great things that the city is doing as exemplified by this team that we have here together. It's very impressive. So we are honored to work for you and happy to be on board now and working with Stephanie, who is a huge asset for the city. In addition to former Secretary of Transportation Rodney Slater, who will be leading the Detroit team, we also have a broad breadth of bipartisan partners and members of our firm. Our policy department is led by former Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott and by former Senator from Louisiana, John Breaux. We have former Speaker of the House, John Boehner, as part of our team, and 3 former members of Congress who are all very engaged, including the former chair, just recent former chair of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. So we have a really broad reach in the public policy space. I am the co-chair of our Transportation, Infrastructure, and Local Government practice in the policy department, and we represent many local governments across the United States, in addition to transit authorities and housing departments, et cetera, water districts. And we understand cities, and we understand the nexus between local governments and the federal government, and the incredible breadth of that nexus, which goes from human trafficking to CDBG, to law enforcement, public safety, homeland security, water infrastructure. And we have a core team of 6 people who work in that space, that local government space, that will be working with you. But then we also have the former members of Congress that we can call on, and then expertise in other areas, in municipal finance, in compliance, which is going to be a big aspect of the funding that's come out of the CARES Act and may come out of future legislation with regard to the COVID crisis and the financial economic crisis, and broadband, energy, oversight, healthcare, a lot of different areas. So we're really thrilled to be looking forward to working with you. We have a huge bill that was just introduced by Speaker Pelosi that will go to the House floor on Friday. And it has a lot, it's $3 trillion. It's pretty much your dream piece of legislation for local government. It has additional state and local government relief funds for both revenues lost and for dealing with COVID. It has individual assistance. It has housing forbearance. So there are a lot of pieces in this legislation that's moving to the House floor that we have been working on prior to now and will continue to work on. We have a long way to go. The Senate is reluctant to move forward right now. And so they will be taking up something, but probably not as large in scope as this, and probably not as soon.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Washinton, let me ask you, why did, as you indicated, I've been saying forever we needed a federal lobbyist, we needed a federal lobbyist. So why do you think it is so important and crucial to the city of Detroit that we have a federal lobbyist now?
So, Council President, that's a great question. So thank you. I think because there's so many layers to at the federal level. You have, you have Congress, you have the federal agencies like HUD, the Department of Transportation, the U.S. Treasury, and you also have the White House. So, just having relationships. And as Vicki stated, Squire Patton Boggs has a very deep bench, and having those relationships just can maximize any effort that the city of Detroit is trying to move forward on a federal level. And it can help the state, but it does eventually trickle down to us. We can manipulate or advocate for changing formulas, especially with our high level of poverty. And we have to bring those types of things forth, like just all that Detroit is, we have to bring forth so that we get those dollars that can help us, create programs that, we just mentioned earlier, but I mean, in addressing water affordability and addressing our homelessness issues. So I think if we bring these issues forward at the federal level, we look to advocate and just make our programs that we currently have and develop new programs, but make them even stronger with those additional funding resources and legislation.
Okay, thank you. And let me just say to you, Vicki, I look forward to working with you. We're talking about COVID-19 now, but even past COVID-19, a federal lobbyist is so important to the city of Detroit. We have to make sure we get our fair share in the city of Detroit from the federal government to do some of the things that needs to be done in the city of Detroit. And then not just that, there are so many things that we might be able to get our fair share in, but we just don't know about. And one of the things, for example, was human trafficking. And it was so many grants and so many dollars there in human trafficking that we were not even aware of. And then when I became aware of it, I told the chief, and we even got a little unit for human trafficking, got more officers to deal with human trafficking. And so there is so much money in DC that's there waiting on us to get our fair share. So welcome aboard to the city of Detroit. We look forward to working with you. We look forward to making sure we are maximizing what we are getting from the federal government pre-COVID-19 and post-COVID-19. So thank you both for the work that you are doing and for the work that you will be doing. And so we look forward to working with you. more.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you. So in addition to resolutions and contracts, the Detroit City Council also considered various planning and development items. We approved a property sale to Fractured Acre Farms LLC development. Due to the amount of properties, I made an inquiry regarding community engagement in the area. Although there currently is not a community engagement policy in place legislatively, the developer did take some steps to engage the surrounding area. I look forward to working with the various city departments to enhance the engagement on various issues. I will begin outreach and engagement on the community engagement ordinance on Friday, May the 15th at 9 a.m. during my coffee and conversations. So please make sure you join me during this conversation. We have been just zooming away. Zoom, zoom, zoom is what we have been doing. So it's very important to note that the Detroit City Council does not always approve items. The community came out in large numbers to object to the demolition of 561 East Jefferson. And based on the community concerns, we voted to deny the demolition. Joining us is George Etheridge, the city planner with the City Planning Commission and the Legislative Policy Division, and also Mr. Leo Gonzalez, the real estate consultant for 561 East Jefferson. Mr. Etheridge, what were some of the reasons the community gave to you and that you heard in opposition of the demolition?
Thank you, Madam President, for having me on. As it relates to this particular item, it's actually been kicking around for about 3.5 years now. The initial request that came from the developer to demolish the property was just that, simply to demolish the property. There was no greater plan that was laid out as to what the future development of the property would be or look like. And that was of concern to the City Planning Commission and staff. So on October of last year, an application was formally submitted to allow for the demolition and ultimately what would have been a parking lot, a surface parking lot for that subject site. A lot of the community opposition that came about was related to losing yet another building in the downtown area for surface parking. There are many that are of the opinion that we have plenty of parking. Parking is costly. That not another beautiful, feasibly conserved building should be demolished for parking. So that was primarily the chief concerns that we heard from the community. Again, the community came out in force in opposition to the demolition of yet another building for surface parking. Some of the concerns that came from the developer were the manner in which the building has not been maintained and how the building is currently being used. I think this panel discussion in general ties very well as it relates to providing housing for veterans and providing housing for individuals of human trafficking. Primarily through development block grant, your honorable body allocates funds to provide services for these specific populations. And it's those individuals who may be in those situations that are homeless, which have been taking advantage of this building as well as other buildings throughout the city of Detroit, given the unseasonably cool weather that we've been having and the harsh winters that we have here in Michigan. Oftentimes individuals find their way into these vacant properties in order to preserve life. And that's been a concern of the property owner. They've indicated that they've attempted to market the property over a number of years. Just by point of reference, this is the building that used to be the Department of Administrative Hearings offices approximately 15 years ago. So for the past 8 years, the property has been vacant and unutilized, and individuals have found their way into this property ahead of the commission making their recommendation. And again, the commission made the recommendation for approval of the demolition of the property and the establishment of the parking lot solely based on the approval criteria, meaning that a plan was submitted, the plan was in conformance with the letter of the law. However, counsel in your wisdom took on the considerations of the community as a whole and as it relates to the fabric of the downtown area. But part of the recommendation from the commission, or what led to the recommendation from the commission, was that the building had in fact been, deteriorated to an extent where it was providing a haven for unsafe behavior. One of the things that we as the commission ultimately did not want to see was loss of life in the property, with the property not being secured and maintained in an appropriate manner. So it did come down to a split vote from the commission, 5-4, in recommendation of the demolition of the property, again, based solely on the approval criteria. But again, counsel in your wisdom saw the value in maintaining the fabric of the downtown area, the proposed demolition's inconsistency with the master plan, the adjacency. Yes, ma'am.
Let me stop you for 1 minute and just ask you a question, because you've talked about the community, you've talked about the master plan, you've talked about the approval. How does the City Planning Commission balance the community input versus the developer needs?
So again, we have a number of public hearings where property owners are notified, residents are notified. We publish it on the website, we put it out on social media, and we solicit those comments. So vast majority of those that came down during the commission's hearings were not immediate residents to the area. You know, you have Mr. Francis Grunow, who works with an organization advocating for a moratorium on parking in downtown Detroit in order to save and salvage historic buildings. So the community definitely has a voice at the table, and the commission hears that loud and clear. And again, weighing the community's concerns versus those of the developer is something that was taken into consideration. We have a number of representatives that sit on the commission that are business owners and understand the burdens that business owners and property owners are currently going through. One thing that was taken into consideration was the fact that despite the fact the building had been vacant for 8+ years, that the city was continually going up on the taxes on the property, despite the fact that there was no valuable tenant in the property. And that was of concern. That tax burden was of concern for the property owner. Again, the property owner had presented that they had done layouts and schematics and pro formas for hostels and other types of office space and work share space and housing that they have marketed nationally and internationally. But once potential investors that come to the area saw the adjacency of the homeless facilities that are offered by Peter and Paul just there on East Jefferson, the condition of the property and the transient population, which likes to hang around that particular area because, again, it was an accessible property to aid them in preserving life. They indicated that a lot of the developers, looked the other way and decided not to invest in that property, which again was one of the reasons for the developer asking for the property to be demolished. They also indicated that, a parking lot, which is in a lot of individuals' opinion, not the highest and best use, could be used to preserve the two historic Victorian properties that are just there to the west. Unfortunately, those have seen some damage as a result of individuals gaining entry into those properties during these cold months and times. So all of that was taken into consideration by the commission. And again, it was a narrow margin by which the recommendation of staff to demolish the property passed. But again, ultimately, council made the decision to preserve the property in an effort to market it and put it into productive use.
Okay, thank you so much for all of that great information. I'm going to move now to Mr. Gonzalez. And so given the denial of the demolition, what are the owner's plans for the property? And thank you so much for being here with us today. What are the plans for the property now? Mr. Gonzalez? Hello?
I'm sorry, I had you on mute. Sorry about that.
That's
Madam
okay.
President, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Thank you for being here with us today to talk about what's going on at the property at 561 East Jefferson. Given the denial of the demolition, what are now the owner's plans for the property there at 561 East Jefferson?
Well, George, I thank you for your narrative. That was helpful, and it gives me an opportunity not to repeat some of the stuff that you've said already. Little background on our company and the answer to your question, Madam President. CRS Commercial has been in business for over 30 years. We've been active in the city of Detroit throughout the 80s and 90s, and to current projects in Eastern Market, in Midtown and New Center area. The ownership has approached our company dating back about 6 months ago to kind of look at this overall area, including 561. And, you know, it was our recommendation when we looked at this project that 561 was a functionally obsolete building. And it had not been for the time that it's been vacant, then I might have taken a different position on this, but knowing how much they've marketed before us and the fact that this building on its own has a limited amount of marketability. They've owned it since 2002. They did have a tenant in there for a period of time. It's been vacant for over 7 years, and it has been a problem building in managing this and trying to keep it in good shape so that we can market it to the market as a whole. It's experienced numerous amount of police and fire responses over the years. What I had suggested, that's sort of just a background on what I had suggested is that, you know, this is in order for, and they own, this same ownership owns 547, which is a wonderful historical structure dating back 150 years. And there's another building next to it, which is 551 East Jefferson. These are two significant buildings on Jefferson. To me, these are the key pieces to maybe an overall larger development in the future of this Jefferson Street area, which goes down to both the Nemos on the right, if we're looking at it, facing it, and the Briggs, most recently Briggs Bar on the left, and encompassing some parking lots in the back. So we look at this as a larger project, and this request for demolition is just a initial strategy to demolish this building and create. And I would offer that we would create no parking there, that we would put grass in that area and create a nice decorative low-scale wall with a nice limestone trim to as a placeholder until we can secure a larger development for this overall area, which includes the two signature buildings, the historical buildings to the left of it. That way, into some points that were made by George, this gives us an avenue to market this, go back to the market and secure someone that either will consider this as a larger project or maybe as a smaller scale project to incorporate these two structures in there. We've tried for many years to secure a tenant there. So honestly, to have a response to what our plan is now, you know, our plan was really set on having this building demolished. It has become a huge tax burden for my client because it is taxable as a functional building, or one could argue that it's being appraised as a functional building when it is not. You know, we feel that if by being able to take the step, we'll revisit this and show the community members that have a stake at this. We don't look at this as a parking lot in the future. We look at this piece here as a larger, as one piece of a multi-story building that could be 20, 30 stories high, depending upon the market. Of course, in the interim, we're going to see a pause and where these developments will go. But as we always have been as a marketplace, we'll be resilient and we'll bounce back. And I think there'll be better days for these properties. But in the meantime, we have to prepare ourselves because these projects take a lot of time up front to design a strategy in order to make it functional for many years to come. So, you know, that is our goal. That still remains our goal. I ask that, you know, that we can still keep this dialogue open and talk to the members of the community that were concerned that this would be a parking lot, as they characterized it in their statements, and assure them and give them the assurances, as well as the city council, that we would under no means use this as a parking lot, and that this would be a piece that would be part of a larger development or smaller development, as may be, for the future. Immediately, that takes care of the problems that we've come back to full circle here, is that we have a homeless problem here. We have a building that is at any point could become and has had other responses from the fire department, could come under fire, which would cause or potentially spread over into the other two structures on Jefferson. And that to me would be the most damning outcome of all, is the fact that this structure here that is in the state of condition that it is, would cause the destruction of the other buildings. Certainly that there's a risk involved in that could potentially play out that way. And we feel that this is a way to mitigate any future potential of that happening. So we ask, and we certainly appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this process. I mean, these parcels along Jefferson, in our opinion, are very significant. This is a very substantial holdings for my client that have owned them for a number of years, and they would really still continue like to see through this to make this once again a very meaningful set of buildings that are part of a development for years to come for this area and the residents of this community.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you again for engaging the community in the project. I have some questions, but I also like to go to my listening audience to see if they have any questions of any of our panelists who have joined us today. And if you have a question, if you please press *9 on your phone and you would like to speak. If you press *9 on the phone, we will unmute you so that you can ask the question that you have of our panelists. And I don't know if we have any callers now who would like to speak.
Madam President, at this time, I do not see any callers in our queue that have their hand up. Once again, as the president said, you can press *9 on your phone if you have a question or comment for our panel.
Thank you, Mr. Grady. So I have a question, and this might be an unusual question that someone may ask, but I'm going to ask Ms. Mays, as a developer, and you hear what's going on with 561 East Jefferson, do you have any, what's your thoughts on what's going on at 561? And I know it's unusual to put you in the middle of something else, but you are right here in the city of Detroit, doing your own development, and just what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so to your point, I don't necessarily like to jump into other people's developments, But what I'll say, some of the things that I heard, that I think I heard, that I know that I've been struggling with as a nonprofit, the cost of construction in Detroit has just escalated dramatically over the last 2 to 3 years. And so in a lot of ways, people have been playing catch up. So just case in point, the project that I talked about earlier, the Sugar Hill project, we saw construction costs go up over that last 2.5 year period by almost 20%. And so you find yourself in this position where you're effectively playing catch up. You think something works on day 1, but by the time you get to day 5, you have to like fill a hole. And so that's causing a lot of the gentleman talked about it taking a long time to put together projects. That's one of the things that has really been feeding that in the last couple of years. And so it, things that seem like a good idea on day 1, by the time you kind of get around to pulling all your people together, getting all your capital lined up, getting all your approvals, it just simply may not, it just may not work anymore. And we've all been grappling with that. The other thing that I think I heard in there, and this is, this is something that my organization is actively looking at. We have so much more we can do in this city for people who are experiencing homelessness. I mean, it's a national problem. But we have a real, and I would argue almost hidden problem, given how many vacant homes we have. It's not sort of like LA here, where you can walk down the street and you can't help but see the number of homeless people. We have a challenge here, and we know that there are good strategies that work to move people out of homelessness safely. But they require an investment. They require commitment. They require real sweat equity. Like, you have to roll up your sleeves. You can't fix someone's homelessness by shooting them a couple texts on the phone about where to go get resources. Like, it's just very difficult work. And housing is a necessary piece of it. And so part of what I heard in there is really just kind of one of the consequences of not having enough of an investment, and how do you deal with that vulnerable population in Detroit?
And so sadly, we literally have working homeless people, and they have a job, but they just cannot afford a mortgage. And that is what's so sad. And when you look at all of the homes, as you indicated, that we have that are vacant, some of the homes are vacant, and some of them do not even need to be demolished. And when you look at the working homeless people, what can we do to assist those working homeless people who are homeless? We had someone who literally was homeless, and they were working at a retail store, and they found themselves not making enough money, and they were sleeping in their car with their kid. And that's sad when you're working a job and you still can't afford to do what you have to do. So you become homeless and find yourself sleeping in the car. And we were able to assist, actually through the rescue mission. They assisted that person, gave them a home, and then worked with them with financial literacy, because a lot of times people just need help with financial literacy. And so thank God that the rescue mission was able to assist them, and those that support the rescue mission to be able to give them the homes to be able to assist those that are homeless. Thank God for programs like that. And I see our time just moves so fast when you're engaged in good conversations, and we do have some great people on the phone. Real quick, I'm going to just say this, and because I've worked with human trafficking, one of the things that I found out was one of the reasons that we have such a problem here in the city of Detroit, in the state of Michigan, is because of the federal law versus the state law, and how the laws are not concurrent. If someone has to spend jail time, and how their time runs together, as opposed to in other states, they have to do the state time and then they have to do the federal time. differently. And so I have also been working with our state legislators on what's going on with, as well as our federal legislators as well, on what's going on with human trafficking in the state of Michigan and in the city of Detroit, because our numbers are extremely high and we have to do what we need to do to bring those numbers down. And just, you know, the other day I think I was leaving an appointment and I seen a young lady just standing on the streets, and the one thing I could say, I don't know if it was human trafficking, I don't know what it was, but the one thing I can say, she did have a mask on her face and she did have gloves on her hand. And I said, thank God she is at least trying to save her life through COVID-19, because COVID-19 is affecting so many of us in a way that I never dreamed that I would be living to see something like what COVID-19 is doing, and especially in the city of Detroit. So we are running out of time. As I look at my clock, I see it is 2:58 and we are scheduled this for 1 hour. And again, I know 1 hour is really not a lot of time when you have great panelists on, just as we have today. So I just want to thank everyone who have joined me this week live from the council table. I'd like to ask everyone to join me again at 11 a.m. on Thursday morning, when we will have another community digital outreach focusing on managing student loans during this COVID-19. And we know that managing student loans at a time like now, people just don't know what to do, and they're asking so many questions. Also on Thursday, we also do a spiritual and mental wellness session from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And so I invite people to get engaged with the spiritual and mental. We know COVID-19 is affecting so many people in so many different ways. And so we ask people to also join us on Thursday from 5 to 6 for the spiritual and mental wellness. In May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we are definitely in the middle of May. Sometimes I think it's January, as cold as it is, and especially seeing snowflakes come the other day. But we are in the middle of May, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So please join us also on Thursday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then on Friday morning, we will be back with coffee and conversations on Friday morning at 9 a.m. And then we are calling on our millennials on Monday, May 18th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We will have a digital outreach with our millennials. And so we're just trying to keep people engaged, trying to let people know what's going on during our COVID-19 period. And so we look forward to talking to everyone. Please follow me on social media or call my office at 313-224-1245 to get dates and times for all of our digital community engagement. And so until the order is lifted, because we are in an order now, a Governor Whitmer's order, stay home and stay safe. And even once the order is lifted, I still want everyone to stay safe and be smart. Put those masks on when you are out in the public. Protect yourself, protect the next person, and protect your loved ones. But when you go home, they're not picking up what your body might be immune to. Stay safe, and until we talk again, be smart. Again, put those masks on, use hot water and soap, and when you don't have that right there next to you and you're out, grab that hand sanitizer and use that hand sanitizer. And remember, social distancing. please keep your distance from the next person. Stay safe, and until we meet again, put that mask on when you're out if you have to be out, and stay safe. And I'm going to continue to say, put that mask on, because I see so many that's out there that I find myself saying, I have a mask. Would you like a mask? I have an additional one. And so I continue to say, and we see Stephen is putting his mask on. So he's going to stay safe. Everyone else, when you're out in the streets, if you have to be out, please wear that mask. I want to again say thank you to my panelists. You all have been phenomenal panelists, and I look forward to talking to all of you and working with all of you in the future. God bless and stay safe, and we will stand adjourned for this meeting today.